Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Subscribing to My Podcast. Because I have a new guest featured every week, it makes it very difficult to maintain consistent viewership. So if there's one thing that you can do to support me or the guest featured on the show, it's by interacting with my channel in every way that you can. You can always decide to unsubscribe later if you decide that you hate me or my show. With that plugging aside, enjoy my discussion with AJ Perron is the podcast host and creator of the world-renowned, campus-renowned, formerly known university podcast, and then now is Pocket Science, and then now has been formally retired. So we're going to get the news on that. We're going to get the updates. But AJ, I've been stalking your content for a long time. I really think you're doing awesome stuff. But I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and then tell the guests and the viewers some of the important things that they should know about you.
I feel like my brain is being picked by TMZ right now, the way you were like formally retired. And I was like, I don't even think I've told anybody like that. Like, this is breaking news, I guess.
Yeah.
8 months later, whatever it is.
There'll be the flash cameras and the photography in the back getting this performance.
To introduce myself, I'm AJ Perron. I'm an industrial engineer major. I hate when people say like I am it before,
You've earned the rights.
And I'm studying industrial engineering at Iowa State. I made the university podcast. It eventually became Pocket Science podcast. Overall, world-renowned just speaker. I love to talk. That's the whole reason I made the show. And entertainer, attributes charming, handsome, funny. Intelligent, maybe level that one up to genius.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah.
Right.
And then if you ask people close to me about me, I would just skip doing that altogether.
Yeah. Sure. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Just take it from me.
Yeah. Yes. This is the primary source of information about AJ. Now, just to glaze for a moment, I think that one of the first thing that I had heard about you, which was just crazy to me, and I'm sure you know where I'm going with this, but you
what are you talking
exciting,
about? Yeah, okay.
We're all in the same boat. One of the exciting things was that you had interviewed Neil deGrasse Tyson on your like freshly newborn, couple-month-old science space podcast at Iowa State, and you had somehow squeezed 2 parts out of him.
Yeah,
which is,
well, that was out of laziness, actually.
Yeah.
I was like going into break, and I didn't want to have to make a new episode in the interim, so I was like, hey, guys, we got a lot to unpack, so it's 2 parts.
Right. But I just think, like, the scope of shows that are happening here never and very rarely includes someone as big as him. And so that was one of the Paul Bunyan tales that I had heard from your story, and then I actually listened to the episode. I was like, holy crap, this is real.
Yeah.
And so I guess just for the scope, you also I've seen varying levels of interactions on your Instagram page, but you have over 100,000 followers on your Instagram page for Pocket Science, and your podcast, at least from the metrics that I can see on Spotify, is doing really well.
Yeah.
So I guess
was
yeah. Which is
Let's
just
get into it.
Tear to my eye.
You're not ready to accept that yet.
I'm not ready.
Okay.
I will beat this dead horse until it starts riding again. But I guess, like, can you walk us through? Well, sorry. Let's start with why is it retired, and then we'll go into the origin story of how it started.
Yeah. Well, actually, 2 things first. First of all, we're both wearing like basically the same thing, which I think is awesome. Did you notice that?
Yeah, it's kind of cute.
Okay. And second of all, the first time you asked me to be on was literally like only a month or 2 after I'd had NIEL on. And the reason it's only happening now is not because I think I'm like a hot shot that's too good. I'm just a dick, and I don't check my inbox very often. And when I do, I'll still forget about messages.
Right.
There's a story on that later if you care about how that came back to bite me one time. Anyway, yes. What did you want to know? Do you want to know about how I got that?
Well, yeah. Let's go with the origin story, and then we'll
the show itself.
Of the show itself. Okay. Tell me how this started, why it started, in some of these early days.
Yeah. So it actually started with a different host than you're probably used to. It started with my friend Cindy, who went to high school with me, but we were not friends in high school. Like we knew each other, and I shouldn't say that. We were friends in high school, but like we weren't like close friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was close enough to her in my freshman year when I came here and realized she had gone to Iowa State. Like, I could approach her and like sit down with her and like talk to her and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But then we became like really, really close friends quickly there, because it's like, hometown reunited, like, because I'm not from Iowa. So, I mean, Minnesota, there's a lot of people who come here, but still. So reunited there, and I was like, hey, I'm going home for probably at that time, like Labor Day weekend or something like that. Like, let's just carpool together or whatever. And so that was like where our friendship really started exploding, is when we get to drive together and hang out together and stuff like that. Anyway, the first time I think we ever drove back together, we did like a road trip question list, whatever. And we got through so many of them. It's a 4-hour drive, but still, like, we got through over 70 questions, and something like 72 or 73 was, and granted, the first 72 questions, whatever it is, was in the first 2 hours. The last 2 hours was literally on a single question, which I think was, do you think aliens exist? And that just kind of, I guess, sparked something in both of us, where we are both people who can get very intense about something, or like very enthusiastic, and we're both like spiritual people, but also like scientific people and like thoughtful people, and maybe calling myself thoughtful is like glazing myself. Like,
Sure.
we're thinkers, I guess.
Sure. It doesn't mean that you're thinking about accurate or correct things. You just like to think.
I'm just thinking, a lot and talking a lot. And so, as a joke, you've probably heard people say, like, we should start a podcast. But we're both very like passionate and enthusiastic. So we were like, oh my God, yeah, what if we actually do that? Like, what would it be called? What would our tagline be? Stuff like that. In those last 2 hours, we were like, it's going to be called University, Universe-ITY. That was before we knew about search engine optimization. Like, that's, dashes are usually a no-go, but whatever, we'll get into that. We were like, let's start a podcast. This was going to be called. By the time we get to Ames, I'm like, calling my mom. I'm like, oh my God, Mom, like, this is happening. You know what I'm saying? We're starting a podcast. And I don't know. I think I remember hearing in my mom's voice, like, kind of a tinge of like, are you really, like, this is a pipe dream. Not necessarily like she didn't think we could do it, but just because it's like, okay, like, I know you, like, you're kind of just being funny right now or whatever. But seriously, like, that day, nothing got done in our classes. Nothing. We were just thinking about the show, met about it over lunch, had already started creating like concept cover art, and we were like, we're recording on this day. Like, we got the center here, whatever. Like, let's just do it. We got everything we need. Let's start it. And we did. Got a lot of support from like family and friends and stuff like that, that wanted to watch the first episode. I'll tell you what, the viewer count between the first and the second episode was very different. Mm-hmm. It was like a quarter of the people or less. You know what I'm saying? You probably get that.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, everybody's like, oh my God, Elijah started a podcast. And then they're like, I don't even like podcasts. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They're just listening for you, which feels good, but there's a mix of that. Anyway, only like 6 episodes later, tragically, she was, this isn't like tragic. I just paused there for a second. So like, don't worry, she didn't like die or anything. No, it's not going crazy. I just spaced out. So she transferred schools to pursue like I feel bad that I'm forgetting it, but she's going into medicine, but specifically with like business management in medicine and managing medical staff and stuff like that. So she transferred to the University of Minnesota to continue that program because it made more sense than here at Iowa State. So obviously we're like, okay, well, we didn't know enough about making podcasts then to do it virtually. So we just stopped the show there. But then after a longer break, I invited my roommate Judd on the show, and things were like still kicking then. So we were like, why don't we just do this together? And so Judd and I made the majority of the episodes. I think like between Judd and I, it was probably like 40 plus or something like that. But yeah, what's next that you want to care about?
I guess the next step is how do you get Neil deGrasse Tyson on? Like, that is still wild.
Yeah, you pray a lot. No. So what I did was I was like, I need to just, you ever have that thought where you're like, I'm a nice person, like, why not me? You know, like, I'm a decent person, like, why couldn't it be me? What's different between me and like everybody else? So I was like, if I just reach out and am direct and acknowledge my limited social media presence and just like, you know what, I have basically nothing to offer you, but why don't you just come talk to me? Like, I like what you do, and you're smart and you're a scientist, and I got some questions for you. Like, let's have a chat. You know, you're cool. I want to be cool, and I think you'll help me with that. And if you want to, do charity, basically. I was asking for charity. I asked a lot of people besides NIEL. I asked a couple physicists, to name a few, like Brian Cox, who's a British guy who's pretty famous. Michio Kaku, who's a kind of a more theoretical physicist. He's written a lot of famous books in kind of the realm of stuff that we look at. Anyway, I emailed NIEL too. And it was more than emailing. It was like Instagram message, like just kind of berating them a little bit. Anyway, and then that was probably just one day when I didn't want to do homework and then forgot about it for a couple weeks. And then the email came in from NIEL's assistant who was like, hey, NIEL would love to do this show. And I was like, I don't think you read the part where I'm like, I don't even really have a good podcast. And sometimes like the mics like make weird noises and stuff. But if you're sure about this, like, let's make it happen. Anyway, terrifyingly, it got like pushed back a couple of times. And for a second there, I was like, am I getting scammed? Like, is somebody just like, somebody found my Insta message or something like that, and now I'm getting played kind of thing? But we made it happen. We did a virtual episode. It's 2 hours long. NIEL was awesome. And, you know, we introduced him. He was like, Dr. Tyson. He's like, you got to call me NIEL. He's like, he's a very down-to-earth kind of guy. I don't know, like, what the general, like, population thinks about him. I think he's super awesome, and he was super nice and a great like speaker. But most importantly, when I said like, you know, thanks for coming on, like, really, this was really going to help us out. And he's like, well, I don't really, this is paraphrasing, but he's like, I don't really care if you get views from this or not. He's like, I really hope you do. Like, I wish that you make something cool out of this, but he's like, but at the end of the day, like, you are interested in these topics. You reached out to me, and it's my job as a scientist and a, you know, a good person to help those who are curious, and that person happens to be you. So, you know, why not? It doesn't matter to me if you have 1 million followers or 1 follower. It's like, this is what I'm here to do, and so he's more than happy, basically.
Gosh, that is just crazy, and still, like, when you talk about it now, like, I need to start reaching out to more people. I guess is the moral.
You just gotta you find out quickly what celebrities are like cool and which ones are not cool. Actually,
yeah. Well, you might as well get that out of the way at the beginning, you know, before you have like a giant platform. I guess that must have just fundamentally altered everything. My brain chemistry, actually, everything about the seriousness of this podcast. Like, it probably became a job. Right after that, it was like, holy crap, I need to make sure that I maintain this momentum. Can you talk to me about the following after this, and then like the work ethic change, and then what are some of these things that you implemented?
Yeah, I'll try to speed up a little bit too, because I have loads to talk about. So it's like it's you know, it's in our best interest to move quickly through these next like several months of the show. But so he comes on. I made 2 episodes out of his thing, and those took us from 60 listeners to like 600 in a day. You know what I'm saying? Just like word kind of spread fast about the whole thing. And what was more important at that point is I was like, you know what? If I can get NIEL on and I can start making something out of this, like this is my chance. I've never felt closer to like having some real opportunity, you know, or being able to make something actually really cool besides just you know, podcasting for podcasting's sake, right? You got to have a purpose, and it became clear to me then. So I was like, I have 2 hours of content. I'm going to learn how to make these like viral shorts and stuff like that with the text popping up and the zoom ins and the zoom outs and all the effects and whatever. And I'm going to make one every day. I was like, I'm going to make one every single day. And my first plan was like just for the summer. I was like June through August. I'm working part-time. I'm like, I'll figure it out. Like, so that's a way to learn really quickly. That's true for anything, but like just trying something, even when you have zero experience, look shit up. Use YouTube, use Google. It's hard to say you have an excuse. Like, there are excuses, but there's not really excuses sometimes. Sometimes you are the only excuse. Like, you're the only thing standing in the way. So that was true for me is I hadn't done that up to that point, but NIEL, having him on was inspiration finally to make me go like, okay, try, you know, like make this good. And so I made a lot of videos. Like I said, I was making one per day. And very quickly, at least that period on Instagram, you know, I made videos for like a year and a half, almost 2 years. So I saw the algorithm change a lot. But at that point, there was no easier time than 2023 to go viral on Instagram. Seriously, you can make dumb videos, you can make really high quality videos, anything in high quantity was really working. So by the end of the summer, I probably got to that 1,000 followers thing, whatever.
On Instagram or?
On Instagram, yeah, on Instagram. I think I was posting to YouTube and TikTok too, but the interesting thing about TikTok, first of all, I'm glad that it's at least in hot water right now. It's like, it's not banned, but it's not like not banned right now. But I'm glad it's in hot water because I had a very hard time making what went viral on Instagram go viral on TikTok. At least for every video, right? Like I can make basically every video work for me on Instagram. That wasn't the same on TikTok. In fact, TikTok would send me messages like BFFR, like try again. This is not for us. We want this kind of content. We don't this kind of content, whatever. In a little more bot way because I was a small account.
Sure.
But they were saying like try again. And I didn't have time to feed two different pigs. Like I had to focus on one. So that was, to me, was Instagram. I kind of put all my eggs in one basket, which was Instagram. End of the summer, probably had 1,000 followers, but October, 20,000 followers. And just into the new year, January 2024, I hit 100,000. And I was like, oh my God, dude. Like you would be insanely surprised at how fast that exploded. Like it really was a ramp up. Unfortunately, like between January 2024 and when I stopped in October 2024, like nothing really changed. Like there was definitely, I could feel the shift digitally and like what people liked, what Instagram wanted people to make. And so I couldn't figure out a way to make what I was making work for the platform. But most importantly, I had kind of dug myself a bad grave because I made a lot of memes and like funnier, shorter videos, which is good. There's nothing wrong with that. I liked those videos that I made, and I thought some of them were pretty clever. Some of them were pretty stupid. Doesn't matter. You could go look on our Instagram page and see for yourself. But anyway, so the way our users expected our videos and the way the algorithm treated our videos, that they wanted them to continue to look that way, to continue to look the way that made us viral. Those memes, funny videos, stuff like that. So to try to push the podcast content was very difficult because that's not what our platform expected, right? So I couldn't post easily videos of myself talking about topics unless they're really, really, really high quality. Then people don't care. But it's tough. Not all your videos are going to hit, and that was sometimes the case. And it got even harder because here all my memes are. I was hitting millions of views on individual videos. I think the highest video I ever did 24 million. And that was just like a green screened Willem Dafoe on, I don't even remember the joke.
Is it him looking up? Or
yeah, it's that joke, but I don't even remember what the joke was, but it's not important. You know what I'm saying? It's just something dumb. And so that kind of stuff was doing really well. And it was so easy to make, All I had to do was come up with the ideas and the jokes and stuff like that. But even that, it's like, you just keep a running list on your notes app. You only need one a day. You got to be funny once a day. I'm funny all day, okay? So it's not that hard for me to be funny once and come up with a joke. Anyway, so that coupled with the fact that coupled with the fact that that's what people wanted, made the whole process super easy. And I'm, for a lot of you listening, I'm sure you watch TikTok and you watch Instagram, and depending on your feed, like my feed is a lot different than my mom's feed, but you probably like a lot of funny stuff. You like engaging, positive. I don't know. You like memes probably. Do you get a lot of memes on your feed?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sure there's a bajillion other creators out there that are feeling the exact thing I felt when I was making videos, which is like, I really got to lean into this because this is what people like. And to be honest, I think Instagram likes that. And I don't think Instagram really cares what kind of videos are out there. They just really need people there in whatever way that is, So at least for the time being, or at least it was around this time last year, was a lot of memes. So between January 2024 and when I stopped, we didn't really gain a lot of followers. There was kind of like a plateau there, and I was trying everything, and I really just wanted to drive people to our podcast. So most of the time, just got to make sure that the page looked like if they click on my profile, they're going to see it's a podcast. Even if it's posting memes, they're like, okay, I get it. Like they're a podcast. Here's the links, whatever. In the comments, I'm always saying like, hey, if you like this stuff, like go check out our show, whatever. But I don't know. It gets grindy. It gets really, really grindy, and it's easy in there to forget why you're doing it. I would almost say I got like a little blinded by just like my desire to get views and clicks and whatever. Kind of got lost there in the fact that I forgot I just started this to learn new topics myself and then share them with other people. And as soon as it started not feeling fun, I was like, this sucks. It kind of hit like very quickly last September, October time. All of a sudden, it was just like, I woke up one day, I was like, I do not want to do that ever again. You know, not necessarily making the podcast and stuff like that. I loved it. We had a segment where listeners would write in and I'd read their stuff and whatever. And that was rewarding to hear people from other countries that have heard what you've said and maybe clinged to something in particular. It's like, I hope they remember that conversation for a long time. But it was the fact that I couldn't sustain my podcast without sustaining the social media presence, at least at the level that the show was at. I couldn't do one without the other. And if Instagram wasn't becoming fun, well, that was kind of my like golden ticket at that point to having a highly successful show. And it was because of the fact that I couldn't separate those two that I kind of stepped away. Not knowing if I would return again, but I mean, at this point, it's been a long time. So like you said at the start, safe to say, maybe this is the official retirement. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to need just a little bit more clarity. To me, it feels like there is some separation between your expectations and mindsets about what it would take to keep something up like this and then what it actually felt like. I guess I'm wondering what is stopping you from maybe biting some of these bullets and just being like, I don't really care anymore if Instagram doesn't like that I post these memes. I'm just going to post my podcast clips and I'm going to be kind of relentless about it because this is what I want. And who cares if I lose 60,000 followers? Like at least I'm doing what I want to do. And then you can rebuild in the exact way that you want it to be. I guess what is stopping you from kind of biting these bullets and just intentionally only doing what you want to do, even if it costs success? Yeah,
that is a really good point. That is actually like, that is the only valid question to ask at that point. It's like, who cares, right? Like, why don't you just do your thing instead of Instagram's thing? I don't really know if I have a good answer to that. It's tough because I knew how much I put into it from the start. I knew how much work that required to get me here. And I saw like starting over with that level of risk again involved, because you might not take off the second time through, right? And maybe that's okay, but I think at some point I become a little bit blinded by, and I wouldn't say I'm not gonna pretend I'm David Dobrik or like is he the
Mr.
one
Beast?
Yeah, or I'm trying to remember. I don't think David Dobrik got canceled. Maybe he did. I'm not like a huge sensation, right? So when I say like blinded by success, I'm not like sitting over here like rolling in cash and I'm like,
Sure.
Oh my gosh, like I'm doing heroin and like this is like I'm a celebrity now, Right. I was blinded by the fact that like it just felt good to I'm going after Instagram views, and if I do it in this way, I'll get them, So at some point I had become a little bit blinded by that success, and it had become unclear like whether I cared more about the show or whether I cared more about growing the show. Because those are two different things. Like you can do it just to do it, or you can do it because you are trying to like do something with it. So I don't know, to answer your question, I don't know what it would take to get me to just bite some of these bullets. At some point, it was just the feeling that no matter what I put out there, I am kind of like at the will of Instagram or the internet in general to decide if, you know, they're going to chew me up and spit me out or not. And that's kind of a uncomfortable feeling. Like, it doesn't feel like you can really, it feels like I'm relying on them, you know? And I didn't really like that feeling a whole ton. And at that point I knew I had hopefully inspired loads and loads of people to continue to be curious and to ask questions and to, you know, I tried to emphasize a couple key messages, which is just like, I don't know everything and that's okay. And if you don't know everything, then that means like, look at us, like two idiots, just like trying to make sense of everything around us. And just trying to stay humble as a host and stuff like that. But I don't know. I kind of got a little off there.
I guess the secret sauce that I might be missing from this, can you speak a little bit to your purpose for doing the show, like why you started it and then kind of where it veered off that course? Because to me, I get the pleasure as a tiny creator to do exactly what I want. There's no persuasion from outside sources to do the things that I don't want to do. Yeah. And as it gets bigger, I could see that changing. But as of now, it might be naive to say, but I can see that my purpose in the future wouldn't change. It would still be talking, having these conversations, learning about mindsets, learning about other people's things. Nothing would change as I get bigger. Can you allude to like your purpose and how, because it must have changed if you're relying on, or if you're allowing kind of these views to ostensibly cancel your show.
Yeah.
So I guess talk to me about your purpose and how it's changed.
Yeah. Well, maybe the interesting or part of the reason that it was so easy for me to stop the show is because I didn't start it with a clear purpose, you know, and that's okay. That's how I wanted to start it. I was just doing this with my friend Cindy because it's like, there's loads of fun. It's like, if we're going to, you know, talk anyway, just record it or whatever, right? And I like to think that this was before podcasts started getting some flack in like in terms of the meme industry, you know what I'm saying? Or like the clip, what do they call, like clip farming kind of thing?
Yeah.
So I started it at a point where I was just like, this is just fun and that's all I need it to be. Eventually, when I had NIEL on, I was like, I want to become NIEL. Like, he really inspired me. I was like, I want to be what he would probably call like a celebrity scientist. When he said that thing about, you know, I'm just doing this because you asked, you know, like simple as that, that was really touching to me. And I was like, I want to have a mission as clear as that, to just be like, if you have a question, I want to answer it with you, you know? So that became my purpose for a really long time. But I don't know. At some point, I just saw that I had let it get to a point where it felt like a job. It felt like a job. And there was a period where it felt like a job and I was okay with that. And then all of a sudden there came a time where it felt like a job and I wasn't okay with that. There was, I mean, a couple changes in my life at that time. Like, I had went and worked 8 months at Collins Aerospace, and that was just like weird to be in a different part of the United States, like just living alone and then coming home and doing this. And I think I started to transition, like, honestly, at that point too, what I wanted out of my life. I was like, I don't need this this celebrity scientist like dream anymore to be fulfilled. Like, I see it being fulfilled in a lot of other meaningful ways. Like, you know, supporting my family, starting a family, but also just like being a really good ass engineer and like just doing some cool stuff. And then also leaving time for yourself. That's something I hadn't done in a long time. Like, I'm going to try to, it's hard to say how much work this was. You get it. But, like, it's hard not to come off cocky when I say how much work this was, but it's like, at some point, man, I was working like 50-hour weeks at my job, and then I'd come home, and it's like, okay, it's time to start researching for this, like a new topic I'd never uncovered. Like, all right, let's talk about wormholes, you know? All right, let's talk about different theories on time and its existence in our universe, right? Fat ass topics.
Yeah.
And it's like, you got to sit down and you got to write about it and draft up a script and then revise that script and get good sources and practice how you're going to talk about this kind of stuff. And then after you've prepared for the show, besides writing it or besides then going and recording it and editing it and publishing it, you got to be smart too, because now you're writing episode descriptions and how are you going to hit that SEO and make you go to the top of the list and stuff like that. And how do you want to name the episode? You got to be really clever, but really engaging, like a New York Times article. That was usually my go-tos. I'd look at New York Times articles and look at how they title their stuff and whatever. So that work is stacking up over here. There's the podcast. And then it's like, who the hell knows about the podcast unless you do some advertising for it? Now I'm on Instagram. Now I'm making videos. Now I'm trying to engage with people in comments. Now I'm trying to learn what would TikTok like if I start going on TikTok. What other ways can I reach people? I got to start a Twitter to, and man, it was just stacking up. And eventually I think there was just a trade-off where I was like, I have made a big enough impact for this to be where I wanted it. I don't need to be the like most famous person in the room or anything like that. And I just look at what I just accomplished, look at what I just did. Just because you stop doesn't mean it never happened. It's kind of the same thing with like maybe this is a weird metaphor, but like, like a dead relative, or like a family member. Once they're gone, it doesn't mean you didn't get to enjoy so many amazing experiences with them. Maybe I shouldn't compare dead relatives to a podcast.
It's your own podcast.
Yeah. Be real. It happened, and it was cool, and it was a blast, and maybe I didn't see an end in sight, so I just kind of made one.
Yeah, and honestly, like, there's no I don't think there's a wrong answer in this, and I think you probably took the most responsible route that you could have possibly taken, given your purpose and given your like what your goals are. You were very honest with yourself, and you're like, this is just how I feel. This is what I want to do. You were very honest with your sets. You didn't let the possibility of fame overturn what you want to do in life, your purpose, the ideas of what you want to spread. So I think that's a really responsible thing to do. Given the journey that you've done in this, what advice do you have for people who are looking to all of the dudes who say that they want to start a podcast? What is your advice?
No, I'm kidding. What's my advice for people trying to start maybe anything in general? I guess podcasts included. Maybe podcast for now. Do what I did at the start and maybe what you did at the start. Correct me if I'm wrong, which is just start it because you want to. You don't need anybody's permission to start it. And you certainly don't have to listen to people's critiques and stuff like that because you are doing it for you. You don't have to prove to anyone that you made it. That was one of the things I struggled with at some point, which was I was like, man, my classmates see me just grinding this stuff all the time. Like, I got to really be successful to show them and not because I wanted to, I was trying to have them catch strays and stuff like that. You want people to know that you did it, right? But don't. Just do it because you want to. And it's literally that easy. And then my second piece of advice on starting anything, podcast included, but just anything, is what I said at the start, is there are excuses, but there aren't really excuses. You tend, most of the time, you'll find that you are the only excuse is you telling yourself not to. That goes with learning something new, like how to make videos, how to write scripts, be interesting. That was something I struggled with for a long time. It's like, how do I make people want to listen to me and not feel like I'm faking it? That's another thing too. It's like you get on a microphone and you want to know that you're interesting in the most humble way possible. Like you don't want to feel fake. People know fake, so don't let you get in the way of you. Just learn it. And things take a lot of time. I was not overnight success. It took almost 12 months to get my first 1,000 on Instagram. And even then I would consider myself extremely lucky that ever even turned into 100,000. But be okay with things taking time and be patient with yourself. And don't get mad at yourself when things don't work out. You'd be amazed at how many videos I posted that got less than 100 views. It just happens.
Yeah, and I just have one quick like housekeeping question. Talk to me a little bit about, if you can, the stats of the podcast, like the actual like on your streaming platforms. Like, what did that look like, and what kind of views were you garnering on your long form stuff?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I didn't make long form videos. At some point, I just decided I was like, I just want the only video editing I'm doing to be for. I mean, it's easy enough to upload it to YouTube, but I was almost like being greedy with my stats. I wanted to keep them all on one platform so I could drive that number up.
Sure.
I was like, I'm not posting to YouTube. I'm not posting to this. It's just like Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Like, take your freaking pick and go listen. All right.
Yeah.
So the show itself, I'll talk about the smaller numbers first. Probably about per month, we were doing 2 episodes, and we're getting about 5,000 listens to those episodes, and that's
each or both together.
Together in that 1 month. Now that could have been from older episodes too, like people catching up, but it's just like per month, 5,000 people unique pick up the show and listen to it. And so that was like just the podcast itself on Instagram. Which, here's another point I actually didn't make earlier. Is another reason I stopped is because I kind of alluded to this, but the podcast and Instagram became so separate. It was like they didn't feel like connected, and I didn't see a way for them to get connected again, And I was like, it's not worth it. Like, look at what I just did. Like, whatever. Stop stressing about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is not worth you graying your hair at 20. What the hell were we talking about?
What about Spotify stats?
Oh, stats. Yeah. Okay. So Spotify and Apple Podcasts, 5,000 unique listeners per month. So that meant that the actual listens to episodes, because people want to listen to multiple episodes in a month, was much higher. I'd say that was probably like 20,000. But you can see that number start to fall a little bit as new viewers catch up to your show, and then they regain kind of a normal listening rate. A lot of people wished we had done an episode a week, and who do you think I am? I'm not. I'm not going to churn this out. Okay, this takes time. You get it. It takes time to calculate these. What's your episode release calendar, by the way? Is it every week? Every other week?
But I do not. I put in half the work.
Unfiltered.
I put in half the work that you guys do.
Fair. Okay. So we were doing 2 a week, so about 20,000 streams of the audio. Now on Instagram, things were much different. It was like probably averaging like 45,000 views per video. No, I shouldn't say that. I should say 45,000 for like normal videos. But then you get these spikes on Instagram, right? Where I'd have videos that hit like 1 mil, 6 mil, 6 mil, 6 mil. I said earlier, I think 25 mil was like the most I ever got. So those stats were insane. And I think over time, I would look at it, but I deleted Instagram off my phone. I just like, it's so beyond me right now. Like I try to, honestly, I would say I'm living like the equivalent of like a keto, like a digital keto diet.
Sure. Going
like
cold turkey.
Right. Yeah. Now my friends would be like, you spend way too much time on the Snapchat Discovery page. But I'm like, I can't help it. I got snaps on my phone to talk to people, and I accidentally get whatever. But yeah, I try to stay off it now, just at least for the time being. So on there, I don't know if I had gotten up to 120,000 followers. Now that number's dipped back down since I haven't posted anything, and people just do their like kind of purges of their following and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. Is that kind of the stats you were looking for?
Yeah, and I guess that elicited a response to me that I've been kind of curious about. You're at numbers. You're at money making numbers now. Like,
oh, I'm so happy to talk about this.
Yes.
No, I'm not. Okay. No, I'm not.
I'm very interested in this
because this is a little trap that Instagram and YouTube puts it, and TikTok, anybody puts their creators in. You want to make money making videos? YouTube long form. That's it right there. You get millions of views. That's how you become Mr. Beast. You become like any of those. You become a creator. It's on YouTube long form. That's it. You want to make money through TikTok and Instagram? You got to get a deal. You got to get a brand deal. You got to get a whatever. Nobody's making brand deals with Instagram accounts, okay? First of all. All right, sorry, meme accounts, not Instagram accounts. Nobody's making brand deals with meme accounts. Did I say that or did I say Instagram?
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. You're right. Okay, so you can get paid on TikTok for per view, but it's like 6 cents, I think, is kind of the median per 1,000 views. You got to think about that, okay? 1 million views then is
$60.
$60, right?
Yeah, sure.
So, you have put in all this effort to post a video a day, and even to make 60 freaking bucks, you got to hit 1 million views every day consistently. Nobody does that. Nobody does that. Instagram does not pay its creators per view anymore. They did for a while in 2023 and maybe early 2024. But about the time I started making good videos, they didn't do that anymore. They call it a bonuses program, but it's by invitation only. And also nobody's inviting meme accounts. Which is, I'm not like criticizing them. Like I wouldn't either if I was a genuine business, you know?
Yeah.
But you know, I don't know. So there's no money to be made on social media. And I know that can be tough because for a while, like all my accounts were like, here's how you make viral videos. I made 30,000 last month with my bot accounts, churning out Reddit stories over Minecraft parkour templates.
Sure.
Though they're just lying. That's all it is. They're just lying. I don't know why they do.
It's oversaturation too. But they were the first to do it, so they're reaping the benefits that nobody else can get access
Nothing
to.
comes that easy. It really doesn't come that. You can't screen record Minecraft parkour and put an AI voiceover over it and make money. It's not how it works. And in fact, if you want my opinion on it, I think that Instagram and TikTok wants that kind of culture to exist about telling people to go, here's how you make viral videos, here's how you whatever, even if it's not true.
Yeah.
Because it's getting them to get more videos. Exactly.
Yeah.
So no, the truth is you can't make money. Now I did have like maybe 2 or 3 opportunities. One of them was with BetterHelp. Everybody's heard of BetterHelp. If you've been on YouTube before, to do like quote unquote a brand deal. But again, that's, by commission, you get somebody to sign up or whatever. And now you're getting part of the money if they use your code. You've heard that before. Mm-hmm. Use our code at checkout. Use this link when you get it. It felt kind of untrue to my original purpose back to that, where it was like, why I ended up never running ads on my show because it was like, why should I literally sell something to someone that I either wouldn't use, or it's just like, why am I wasting their time? Why am I wasting their time for $1? Whatever it's going to be. I think BetterHelp, honestly, their services are really expensive. I don't know if you've ever looked at it. It's like $200 for like to start your subscription to BetterHelp. And so they're going to give you like, you'll get $50 from that. I'm not going to convince anybody to click on this. People hear ads and they're like, plus 15 seconds, plus, skipping ahead. Okay. It's not how it works. And I was like, why am I going to take all of my listeners' time for this minute-long thing just so that 2 weeks from now, one person will sign up and I'll get $50? It's not worth it, So yeah, I don't think there is really any money to be made on Instagram and TikTok. And I think that's actually part of it too, is why I stopped is my goals had shifted to just getting more people, making a business out of it so I can justify the fact that I'm spending so much time on this. At least I'm getting paid. But as soon as I realized how little value there is in viral videos now because of what you said, oversaturation, to me, it was kind of like a shocking moment where I was like, wow, I think I just became part of a system that I don't want to be a part of anymore. Churning out videos for pennies, for the corporate like overlords,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's really interesting. What I will say though is that one, Spotify has a partner program for payment, and that's 1,000 views, which you would have been reaching, right? Yeah. So Spotify could have been paying you. I don't know what their payment plan is per view. Yeah. When they start running ads on your program for you, I imagine it's not very high. That's what I imagine.
Yeah. Because if you're counting your monetization by 1,000 views, you better hope you're at millions. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Like if you're clearing that margin, I don't know, because actually now that you mention that, know if I ever got into the partnership program, partially because I publish on RSS. So is that what you do too?
I publish on Spotify specifically.
Okay, so I don't, and I think that was part of the thing. Is I was at some point thinking about transferring the ownership of my show to podcast or to Spotify, so I could get the benefits of that program. But again, that kind of same thing hit where I was like, you know, how much is this really, and how much is it worth for me to continue just grinding this out all the time?
I guess what I'll say, and this is probably the point I'll leave it at, is that to me, it's fairly understood that as a content creator, you need to be finding moral ways to fulfill yourself to continue making the content. So it has to be something that you partially at least enjoy doing. And the viewers know this about making, or they know this. Internally, they know this somewhere in them. Part of that is some monetary thing. Skipping 15 seconds does very little, I feel like, to a viewer when watching your content to skip an ad than it could potentially do for you. Yeah. So even with the BetterHelp stuff, like $50, I feel like could just do so much to help justify the work you put, and it's exponential in that you
keep working.
Could be
that's
getting
just
more.
The start.
And that's just the start. Now, this all comes on the presupposition, though, that your purpose for doing the show is aligned with that growth, which it just doesn't seem like it was for you, which is totally fine. But I will say, though, like as a content creator, the monetary value is expected from the viewer, and then also as a content creator, that's just part of like what's helping validate, like you said, the hourage, which is kind of a good thing. But if your heart isn't in it in that kind of way, which is very validly not, that's totally fine. But I don't know necessarily how fair it is to say that like there's not a lot of money to make, and especially with the sponsorships and stuff too. Not sponsoring a meme page is very accurate. That is a very hilarious thing to point out. But I think maybe the idea is that if you would have committed to the Instagram page that you really wanted, by taking the bullets on like, hey, I know I'm going to lose a lot of viewers, but I'm going to do this, and monetizing that content instead might have been more profitable morally, but also financially for you as well. So there are some outs, but I guess like, are there other, you know, I wanted to give you the last word because, you know, this is a big moment. This is a big decision for you to make, you know, retiring the show. And I want you to tell all your lovely listeners about this process. But if there are any final closing thoughts on this topic specifically, I'd love to hear your thoughts on just retiring or.
Yeah. You know, I think the main reason I'm retiring is selfishly, it's for me, you know? I would love if there was an easier way for me to, like I said, I wanted to be a kind of a celebrity scientist and inspire other people and stuff like that. Little or big. I just wanted to be what NIEL kind of was to me, somebody who makes people happy about being curious, like makes them want to continue asking questions and stuff like that. I wanted to be that. But I saw that starting to overlap that work with the rest of my life, essentially. You know, start seeing your friends a little less, start like almost not looking forward to coming home from work because you're like, there's more work eventually. So yeah, I did retire for a pretty retired. Look at me with I'm young and have such a great career ahead of me. But like, I stopped doing the show for a very selfish reason. And I'm pretty proud of that because I had gone maybe months longer than I could have, still just trudging through for the purpose of making a show for my listeners, you know? But eventually I was convinced by myself and other people that like, don't take that at the expense of just who you are, you know? Yeah. Yeah.
And I think incredibly responsible thing to do and just to look at it and be like, this is just not doing what I wanted to do. Very, very, there's a lot of bad ways that this could have ended for you, including and heroin, you know, and,
Yeah.
and the other things.
I
that
didn't
just
get to the
have
heroin
happen.
point. So there's such a big win here that we're not discussing. Thanks for bringing it up. Yeah.
You were 1,000 subscribers away from.
Yeah, I was literally so close. I had an Instagram follower timer, and I was just like, I was waiting for a couple more clicks, and I had the line actually ready. Heroin's that whatever. Shows what I know.
Not that I know.
Yeah. It's a needle, idiot. Okay.
What I've heard of the substance, but you were right there. That's the real. It's the picture of the guy mining and then he turns away. When
and the diamonds right here.
It's heroin was right there. But yeah, I think one of the really interesting things about, I guess your interest in general and talking about space, I wonder, space has this really weird alliance with philosophy in a way, and that like you discover a lot about who you are, about the world once
your place in it.
Yeah, once you're blowing up the span of infinite, you know, and what that means. And I just wonder, like, what has space taught you about yourself, about the world? And I want to talk about this as a philosophy major. This stuff really interests me, but I want to talk about your views on these things.
Yeah, I think I asked NIEL a very similar question when he was on my show. So now it's kind of weird because it's like a flip flop, and I'm being asked that, and I'm like, oh,
you're my NIEL.
Yeah. Thank you. I think the thing it taught me is a lot less about myself, and that's a good thing. It taught me about everything outside of myself. You know, the things that scientists believe had to happen for the universe to start. The things that had to happen for the universe to advance to the way it did with stars and our solar systems, and the things that furthermore had to happen to create life itself, you know, and all that comes before you. And by focusing on those things that seem too impossible to have ever happened, it does teach you a lot about yourself and how lucky you should feel and how you should focus more on everything just besides yourself. That also the people who get to experience this really lucky phenomena of life, the interesting characteristics that we as humans have in terms of our emotions and how they let us guide us, and how we seem to be some of the only creatures that can't separate or some of the only things in the universe, life that is, that can't seem to separate emotions from logic. You know, that was actually one of my favorite topics, is whenever we talk about this idea of free will, of you know, is me having emotions and making decisions and stuff like that, is that driven by some fundamental process in nature like everything else is? Or is there something distinctly human? You hear that often, or just distinctly unnatural, spiritual about who I am and why I'm here. The best part is I never answer those questions because I'm not really that smart, and also because I think there are no answers to that question, which makes the whole experience of studying and thinking about space more fun, is the amount of unknowns. And I found that the more unknowns that I gathered on the show, I don't know if selfish is the right word, but the more unknowns I found, the more I thought about things outside of myself. And that was a pretty cool experience to suddenly start living a more thoughtful life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the mindset that a lot of people who are really interested in studying space come out with. I wonder though, if like you're going about your day to day, are there things that rattle in your brain that like remind you to appreciate your life, or are there thoughts or wheeling actions that you do sometimes because of your interest in space? Like, are you walking sometimes and you'll be like, dang, the supernova that happened in this day really allowed this chain of reactions to, you know, like things like that. Are there things that you think about that you're continually grateful that really just pop up in your brain throughout a day to day?
There is something. Hold on one second. Okay, good. Nobody important. Just the IRS. So,
sure.
Yeah, there is something I'll just mention one thing. I think the thing that I think about the most out of all the topics that we discussed on the course of our show is free will, like I mentioned before, but something specific, something about I got to think about ways to say this without sounding like I think I'm on a PBS like documentary and like I'm narrating something pre-scripted.
I will clip this. So.
Okay, cool. Anyway, it's about the nature of time, which is we don't know if there's a couple ways to think about time. We can think about it as there's only the present. We being like people, not me at all. Physicists and scientists have basically unanimously agreed that that's not true. There's more than the present. There's the past and the future, and that's because when we look out into space, we're seeing past events, things that happened light years and light years away, just finally reaching us. They exist in our reality, and so in that way, the past is preserved. Now, the thing that I think about is a specific kind of visualization that scientists use to talk about time, which is you're in a plane above me. We're on a very like long island, kind of. Maybe it's like a couple miles long, just thin strip. And I'm standing directly below you. Like your plane is up in the air right above this island, and I'm directly below you. And you're moving from one end of the island to the other. Meanwhile, I'm just standing in the middle here. Okay. And lightning strikes both ends of this island at once. To me, they strike at the same time, but to you, the one you're flying towards strikes first and then the other one after that. Right. To me, that's a little bit of a reminder. Now, I would urge people that are interested to look into this more so I don't sound like a heretic, like there's reasoning behind this, but through many logic steps, that's kind of a proof in a way that like we don't, what's the present to you is not the present to somebody else. And if that's true, then how do we declare that like free will is a thing if like in one universe, like this can happen before it happened or happened to me before it happened to you, right? Like I knew about it before it happened in your reality. So how could you declare that was, it's a very wild topic to talk about, but what I'm getting at here is like, I'm constantly reminded on a day-to-day basis, like I may or may not have control of what I'm doing. And I think I'm entirely okay with that because I feel very like almost like safe in the universe. Like if the universe can create life, then it's probably got a decent plan for me too. A decent plan for everyone, really,
Yeah, I think the free will conversation is interesting to me because I feel like when I'm talking about free will, I must be talking about something different than what people who say there isn't free will are talking about. I feel like when you're referring to free will, you might be referring to like a hyper scientific decision-making process that happens. And at a certain point, no action is free.
Yeah.
But applicably, obviously there is free will in some
at
sense.
some scope that you look at. Yeah.
And to me, the utility of the free will conversation happens very obviously at a level that we can see. Do you know what I'm saying? Like free will exists very obviously in that like I chose to have this conversation with you. Now that might be very macro and that might be very large.
Macro is the way to, right. We've used that description before.
Yeah, so that might be very macro, but like really what are you talking about if you're going to get so micro that like we're now talking about like perceptions of time and we're now talking about like the molecules within your body.
Yeah, they call that a deterministic viewpoint. That's something that Isaac Newton was a famous determinist, and he talks about the fact that it's like if we could measure, and here's an interesting quote I heard. So it's like if you can measure and track every particle in the universe, you could presumably identify everything that's going to happen until the end of time. You cannot do that. So the fuck does it matter? Like free will does exist. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, by all applicable standards, there are also some other things too that are weird, especially against this determinist view, is that right now we have not mapped the subconscious. We have like when you are thinking of an elephant right now, I can't.
I am now.
I can't find the elephant in your brain. It does not exist, but it does exist to you.
Oh, I wish you hadn't told me that.
Yeah, and so that's a subconscious thing that we are unable to locate right now. There's no combination of neurons that project elephant into your brain that we can map onto. Maybe it does exist within your brain that is how it works, but there's still room for some existence of something that we can't understand yet within our brains that maps onto what we call the subconscious right now.
I think if there is, whatever anyone listening, whatever your beliefs may be, I think if there is a creator of the universe, we aren't supposed to know and are unable to ever find out. And I think that's a good thing because it leaves, like you're talking about, this wiggle room to be like, we can't map everything and come up with reasoning for everything. So it leaves room for belief and possibility, even if that is not real. In the structure of the universe, fundamentally, if there is no free will and stuff like that, even if that is true, there is no way for us to know. And if that feeling of free will continues, and if that all the what ifs that we can't map out that you're talking about continue to exist, that's kind of a good thing because it lets life be actually interesting.
It's a motivational force, which I think was one of the really beautiful things that you had kind of pointed out when you were talking about the things that you think about, especially with the perspective of the island. That's really interesting to me. I think one of the probably the most interesting parts about studying space is the perspective that you end up taking on. I think one of my chief philosophical principles right now is that we humans are kind of dumb and we think we're smart.
I don't think that's a principle. I think that's just a fact.
Yes.
Yeah, you're there.
Sure. Well, I guess it's more so I think about this maybe more than other. Yeah. I allow this to dictate more than maybe other people do in my own thoughts, is that like that distinction of thinking you're smart but you are dumb. It should lower your confidence in being right. It should motivate you to look for the right answers, and it should motivate you to kind of hinder how strong your beliefs can be on what is true.
So you're saying people should remind themselves how dumb they are sometimes,
yes,
to continue to question their own reasoning.
Yes, to continue to question their own reasoning. Yeah. One, I think this makes everybody smarter, even the smartest people who do have the right answer. Even if you do have the right answer, it's probably good to think of this as an accident and to go back and uncover why you purposefully know the right answer, which I think is important. And I think studying space, and when you talk about perspectives and when you talk about the unknowns, I think these are all very wonderful reminders that you, AJ, are a stupid person.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a good thing to understand about yourself.
Yeah.
And myself, stupid? Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. To let it take your ego down a couple notches, that's a great thing that we all need, myself included. I think another thing that I think about a lot is I'm just reminded that in a great way, nothing matters that much. Nothing matters that much, you know? And when I say the nothings I'm referring to, it's like your job, like, I hate to say it, but like Fortnite is not like that.
No!
Insane. Yeah, you know, no, I'm kidding. You should take everything with a grain of salt, take things less seriously, and focus outside of yourself. Because I think the thing that matters the most, which is not included in that nothing matters I was talking about earlier, is like how you treat people who are going through the exact same experience, being alive in the universe at this point in time. That's what matters the most. How could you dare tread on someone that is literally in the exact same boat as you are, the closest to you that will ever be in all the combinations of molecules in the entire universe. You have other people near you in your life, and so that's what matters the most.
Do you ever find that the unknown, the vastness of the world that exists outside of you, are you familiar with nihilism?
Yeah. Like,
do you ever find that you slowly creep towards that, or?
Not really. In fact, I think the more I studied space, the more I kind of got to backtrack on what I said, and at the risk of sounding like a hypocrite, things do matter, like locally, like those people I was talking about around you. I don't creep towards nihilism because the more I studied space, the more I realized it's probably physically impossible for us to ever leave our solar system. And based on the political state of the planet, it would be very hard to get a group of people together for long enough to go to even the farthest planets in our solar system. What I'm getting at is that, like, we've got Earth. Like, we might make it to Mars eventually, but these trips take time and there are physical limits, you know, especially like we can't leave the solar system because at the speed of light, it's going to take us too long for people to care. People won't care. Nobody's going to commit to that kind of journey. It's cool in science fictions, but I think even Neil deGrasse Tyson has said that before. So if you argue with me, you argue with him. But
Right.
he said before, like, he doesn't think we'll ever leave our solar system. You know what I'm saying? And that reminds us to look back towards what we can control, which is our planet and the people on it. So I don't creep towards nihilism because I honestly don't care about what's outside our solar system. It sounds like, at least in my lifetime and the lifetimes of anybody after me, like this is what we get. Maybe there's a reason behind that. Maybe we are here for a reason, whatever your belief may be, like take it or leave it, like this is it. You know what I'm saying? So like there's a lot to focus on right here. And maybe, just maybe PowerPoint and papers and stuff like that don't matter a whole ton, you know? Or if you got like a C+ versus like a B- in a class, like give yourself a little bit of slack and like refresh your view, you know, take in the whole scope.
Yeah, and I did want to ask about this not being able to go outside of our solar system question. What are the arguments against this view? Like, is there a group of loud people who are convinced that we will? What is the? I'm not scientifically involved enough to be able to debate you on this.
Okay. Well, let's look up a couple of facts. So I don't say something I shouldn't. I'm looking up how far is nearest star. Okay. 4.246 light years. Okay. So that's Proxima Centauri b, or Proxima Centauri. Anyway, so 4.246 light years away from the next closest star. So what that means is that we would have to get to the edge of our solar system, leave our solar system, and travel at the speed of light for 4.2 years. Now, if we were able as humans to travel at the speed of light, we are still restricted by time, that being 4 years. And it would be very hard amidst everything that happens in our lives, just ask NASA, to get a group of people to commit to such a long commitment. You know what I'm saying? And what are we to get out of that? Because we don't know particularly yet what to expect there without sending probes, which would take 4.246 years at the speed of light to get there, to traverse these landscapes, give us more information, to send missions ahead of time to drop supplies and whatnot. It's an endeavor that's almost just like not worth it. Not worth it. Just to get there and to start colonizing, for that to take such a long time. And that's the closest star. They get much farther after that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, even if what I'm getting at is like, you travel at the speed of light, you get there in 4 years and you're like, now we have exactly what we had over there, which is like a solar system. You know, like at what point would humans just be like, there would be no end, you know, just like what more is there to uncover?
Sure. So then,
to answer your original question, I don't know the exact arguments for or against that. That's just introducing my logic to why I don't think we would ever leave the solar system. The first being the fact that the speed of light is so impossibly unobtainable.
mm-hmm. And so then I guess, what are your current views? Like, if you were to convince a normal person, why do you think it's important that we research, discover, and get involved with space?
I would say just for the general population, it's good to know basic facts about our solar system and our planet, and how, more importantly, how we discovered the those facts. For example, how we use carbon dating to understand the age of the Earth, how we use fossils to uncover different periods of life on our planet. The reason you should study those things and ask those questions and find out how we know those questions is to remind yourself, like kind of give yourself the grand scope of life as it is, as yours will be, and how it will be for generations to come. And it's on Earth. This is what we got. We're not the peak of the universe. We're a blip. People often say, like, if you mapped out the timeline of Earth into a 24-hour day, I think even just life on Earth into a 24-hour day, we would be the last second of the last minute of that day. And so that's just to say that once you understand that, I think that thinking less about yourself and more about other people in kind of the way that you were alluding to earlier becomes a lot easier.
Okay, so I guess you support the study of space in a more foundational way, and that like you should use the knowledge of things that have already done, but you're not necessarily supporting space in an exploratory or curiosity way, or is that also another factor of this? Or
that's actually an interesting question. I go back and forth between caring like whether or not we go to Mars. You know what I'm saying? Like as years pass, I will start to care less and less about it because I'm like, even if we get there, like we ain't colonize, I'm not going there, you know, and I don't care. Maybe that's selfish to say I don't care, but it's like, what are we really gaining out of that? You know, besides a more, the stuff NASA cares about, which is a more comprehensive understanding of who we are and where our solar system came from, its origins, to answer questions about what could have been on Mars and life on Mars. I don't think their fundamental reasoning for colonizing Mars would be to put humans there. It's to support missions to ask more questions about that planet and its history and stuff like that. NASA is very interested in history. So I think people get maybe a little mixed up, especially when Elon gets into the picture. They think that like we're trying to colonize Mars and like move humans there. Just kind of what's the point, you know? We're going to start thinking more critically about overpopulation in the limits of our planet here shortly. So like what does getting another planet's worth of real estate get us besides allowing us to have more sex, you know?
Right. Which, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, that's interesting. I guess normally when I talk to people who are very interested in space, there's this importance on exploration for the sake of discovery, for the sake of like a lot of people will point to the fact that like, you know, 99% of space is still undiscovered or whatever. Same with the ocean. Just people have like a scientific curiosity that drives them to really support space travel, which it sounds like that's not the important part for you.
Yeah, it depends on the question you're trying to answer. Because like I do care about going to Europa, or I do care about going to the Cassini spacecraft was orbiting, that is, Europa, one of Saturn's moons, I think, which had a lot of signals based on that probe was giving a lot of signals of like, okay, this might have the foundational elements to building blocks of life kind of thing, you know? I do support that kind of exploration because that's a question I'm interested in. I'm interested in knowing, would life start on a different planet besides Earth? What conditions are necessary to start life? Because we have never made life in a lab before, right? We've never like started it from scratch. There are guesses as to how that happened, including the most notable ones would say that underwater geysers helped fuel with enough entropy the ignition of the first cellular processes and starting like little microorganisms or whatever. You know, I'm not a biologist, but they say it starts underwater and with that energy provided from those geysers. But we don't know that for sure because we haven't done it. And so the question of could life exist on another planet would ring a lot of bells about like who we are and like how important life is. If we can start elsewhere, maybe we're not that important. But if we can have a planet where it's like everything looks perfect, not to be like human centric, but maybe we are like the only place that's supposed to start life in the whole universe. And the rest of the universe is maybe just like meant to be there to make us ask questions and make our experience more interesting and stuff like that. I don't know. But there are some questions like that life one that I think we can answer, and there's some questions like that free will question that I think we can't.
Right.
And so those two things combined give us an interesting mix of this is what we know and this is what we'll never know, and now I'm insane. You know?
Yeah.
Like now you're driven mad by what you know and what you don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good motivation, I guess, for discovering things. Where do you, and you kind of alluded to this, how do you feel the current climate for space exploration is right now? And just, I guess, like with Elon Musk doing a lot of these things with SpaceX and maybe other companies and other interests that might be looming around, like what is the current climate for space exploration right now?
I wasn't around when it started, so I wouldn't know. He gave us 10 minutes, by the way. Okay. I haven't been around for very long or studying this stuff very long. So I've been only keeping up with the news for like 2 years. So I can't attest to how it's changed, but I can say that right now it feels as though engineers will continue to be just insane engineers and do stuff that looks interesting to them, so long as the sun rises.
Right.
There's a company called Hermes. I don't particularly know how to pronounce that, but they're making supersonic aircraft that's going to take it from New York to Paris in 90 minutes. They're going to make hypersonic aircraft eventually that will do even more than that. There are companies trying to make space planes. One that was supposed to launch last year will maybe launch this year, a space plane being a manned, basically spacecraft that looks a lot more finally like the ones you see in science fictions where they are docking to space stations and then releasing and then flying away, not just a up and down kind of rocket thing. So always going to be people that are trying to do really cool things. The problem is it feels at least right now that everything takes a lot of time. You're always going to hear about delays. It will never really feel like that whole rush to the moon thing that I assume it felt pretty awesome in 69 when they finally made it to the moon after just such a rapid amount of progress in that field. But I think things are in good hands. There's still a lot of cool things to happen. Like there's no signs of slowing, I think Elon Musk needs to stop blowing up his rockets. I think he almost thinks it's amusing at this point. He's like, he did a Twitter post last week. It was, success is never guaranteed, but entertainment always is. And I was like, dude, that's like, how many billions of dollars is that right here? Can we start guaranteeing it? That's flight 7. You know what I'm saying? It's like, figure it out at this point.
Right. Well, AJ, it was awesome having you on, and I want to just give you one opportunity to maybe, touch on a theme of this show. You kind of just have the last word to do any plugging that you'd like to do, or if there's a theme from the show or any advice, this is really your platform to just kind of wrap us up here.
Oh, yeah. Well, so thanks for having me on. Again, this was fun. It's nice to talk to another podcaster. It's, right. It feels a little like we're kind of, I don't know, we're glazing ourselves a little bit, just getting to sit here and show off our amazing skills at talking too much. Right. I don't have anything to plug anymore. Obviously, you guys get that whole spiel. My time is over. But if you head to Pocket Science period or Pocket Science _ something like that on Instagram, I think it's Pocket Science _. You can see the videos that we were talking about in that channel and where it's at now and whatnot, just to get, I guess, some context for yourself. Feel free to report it or whatever you want to do. Right. Maybe we could get it banned. I don't even know. Anyway, so you can head there and look at that stuff. But the only other plug I'd have is probably say, call your mom, or your dad, or call someone and just say hi and say, I'm glad I'm in the universe with you. And then ask them if they have free will or not and hang up. Right. Don't say anything else. Just get them thinking. Yeah, right. So, well, AJ, you're wonderful to have on, and this was super fun. Thank you for coming on. You almost got me to make another episode. You almost inspired me. We'll see. Yeah.